Hollywood had never seen anyone quite like Lupe Velez. Not only was she talented, but her exotic beauty captivated audiences, and especially men. In the 1930s and early 40s, this Mexican-born beauty was considered Hollywood royalty. But tragically, in 1944, Lupe's life ended abruptly by her own hand. She was just 36 years old. Sex was her game, and she played it off-screen and on. Lupe Velez was always a woman that was a passionate lover. Then Lupe's legacy has been tarnished by stories about her outrageous sexual appetite and her untimely and bizarre death. Therefore, scandal always managed to attach itself to Lupe. According to Lupe Velez, the two most important things in her life were lovemaking and fighting. And with her, the two were almost interchangeable. But what was it that drove this gorgeous, hot-blooded screen sensation to take her own life?
Let's talk about Lupe Velez, the first Latina superstar of Hollywood, who had the kind of life that could literally fill a scandalous novel. If anything, her life was probably crazier than any book you have read. If her name doesn't ring a bell today, it might be because of how her story took a dark turn. And she made a lot of people angry in Hollywood, so they didn't really give her the press in the end that she deserved. Velez wasn't just a dazzling star on the silver screen. She was also the queen of gossip columns, thanks to her wild love life. Born on July 18, 1908, into a well-off family in Mexico, Maria Guadalupe Velez was the daughter of a colonel and an opera singer. She came from a prominent, well-to-do family.
Lupe was born in a small little village about 230 miles north Mexico City. The day she was born, there was a big hurricane, and that sort of trampled the whole village to bits. She came in with a hurricane and lived her life like a hurricane. Lupe's parents were very interesting. Her father, Jacob, was a military officer in the Mexican army. Her mother, Josefina, was a diva, the Mexico City Opera. Hollywood has a way of creating beautiful, family-oriented biographies. But some speculate that Lupe's illustrious lineage may have been pure fabrication. Martin is the author of Did She or Didn't She? Daddy is a general and Mama is an opera singer. And were they or weren't they? When she grew up in the 1910s and early 1920s, there were very little records kept, particularly down in Mexico. Also, she coming from a very tiny village, there's no way that documents would be kept even by a local church. It was rumored that, that she was as a teenager before she came to the United States. Lupe's mother was fairly trashy, that Lupe actually did a stint working in burlesque houses, and Mama peddled Lupe's favors on the side to stage door Johnny's after the show.
And because of that also, she wasn't the typical stereotype of what they made Mexicans look and behave like at that time. So that rubbed a lot of people in Hollywood the wrong way as well, because they wanted her to fit that typical poverty stereotype and everything. And there was a lot of well-to-do people in Mexico as well. And that was well-educated, well-read, that came from prominent families. And she was one of those people, and she carried herself as such. She didn't allow herself to be disrespected at all. Growing up, she had it pretty good until the Mexican Revolution turned everything upside down. Her family's fortune did end up plummeting, and they pulled her from her cozy boarding school in Texas, because she was in boarding school in Texas. But nothing could keep Velez down for long. Once they moved to Mexico City, she worked at a department store to help make ends meet. But when the sun set at night, she transformed into this performer, dazzling audiences on stage. Trouble was, when her dad found out about her nightlife, he was not happy about it. It was not a good look for him. So she ended up removing his last name and adopted her mother's last name instead, Velez, embracing her rebellious spirit. And just like that, she was on the fast track to stardom. And at just 17, she caught the eye of matinee idol Richard Bennett, who invited her to Hollywood. She was very happy about that, of course, until the Border Patrol turned her away because she was unfortunately underage. She cried all the way back to Mexico City. She was heartbroken, but she was determined to get back to Tinseltown, so she started working really hard at it. After some serious back and forth between the Mexican and American governments, Velez finally made it to California, only to be told she was too young for the role that she worked so hard to get. But her luck did end up turning around when the legendary Douglas Fairbanks cast her in The Guacho. That was her big break. Suddenly, she was starring in hit films, but she was still trying to keep her innocent image intact. And of course, that didn't stop her from mingling with Hollywood's elite and having steamy flings with guys like Charlie Chaplin, Clark Gable, and the much older Tom Mix.
Still, what everybody in Hollywood was talking about was Lupe's reputation as a woman who enjoyed the company of men. Lots of men. Lupe had a brief affair with Clark Gable. And the reason that he broke it off was because he didn't want Lupe going around town telling what a lousy lover he was. She was also an extremely religious woman. And somehow or another, in her own mind, managed to balance being very, very religious with being very, very sexually wild. Lupe's had a very elaborate bedroom, and in her bedroom she had a lot of religious statues and candles and crosses and such. But before they could have sex, he described how Lupe had to go around, kneel down, light all of her candles, pray, then suddenly whirl around, jump on him in the bed.
But none of these romances lasted until she met Gary Cooper. And mind you, these people were like 28 years older than her. She was not 18 yet, and these people were like 28 years older than her. But by now, you guys already know that's how it was in Hollywood. They did not care, especially back then. I mean, they barely care now, but especially back then, you could have been 9 years old and no one would bat an eyelash in that community. So yeah, that was that. Their love was with Gary Cooper, of course, was a fiery whirlwind, and that was to her love of her life, the love of her life basically. But what a toxic union. Opposites attracting in the most chaotic way. Velez was passionate and impulsive, while Cooper was calm and collected. And at first, it was a match made in heaven until jealousy reared its ugly head. Lupe was known for her fiery temperament, and let's just say things did escalate. There were moments when she came at Cooper with a knife, and once or twice, she actually did plunge the knife into him, okay? He needed stitches, but that wasn't the only drama, and lucky for her, he didn't end up dying.
And then she met Gary Cooper, who became her future lover. The chemistry was so great that they apparently slept together the first night that they'd met. Their passion often turned to violence. They fought and loved furiously. I mean, over the course of their relationship, she stabbed him at least once or twice. When she got mad, she was very demonstrative, and she thought nothing of throwing things, kicking him, punching him. And he, being a man, thought, well, it's not right to hit her. But once in a while, he did punch her, and she sort of liked it.
Cooper was a notorious flirt, and it's not to justify anything that she was doing, because she was just toxic in every relationship as well. But it was just an odd relationship. And after just a year of dating, he had an affair with Marlene Dietrich, which I did a video for. And he also had an affair with Carol Lombard, which I did a video for as well. But the affair that really sent Velez over the edge, it was with Cooper's close male friend, and roommate, Anderson Lawler. So Cooper was bisexual. She even spilled the beans to Gossip Queen Hedda Hopper about it. One of Cooper's close friends ended up speaking to gossip columnists about this as well, and spilled some more beans that Lupe wasn't willing to share, but you know, since she started sharing, the friends started sharing too. But the rumor was that, well, it was said from the close friend to the gossip columnist that the three had a little menage a trois action going on. So it was Cooper, Lupe, and Anderson, okay? And guess who insisted on being part of the fun? That's right, our girl Lupe. Now, if Cooper and Lawler ever forgot to invite her to their little escapades, if they started to sneak off on their own, because it's like she agreed to the menage a trois, but the two men would sneak off on their own without her, and she'll just burn up with jealousy, right? She wasn't shy about making a scene either. So one time at a party, they were all three at a party together, like a Hollywood fancy party, and they all three went together, and then Cooper and Anderson, you know, ducked off by themselves for a minute, and she was looking for them and could not find them. So when they came back in, Velez was not having it. She made a huge scene in front of everybody and walked up to Cooper and unzipped his pants in front of everybody and started sniffing down there to make sure Lawler's, like Anderson's, cologne was not down there or there wasn't any remaining fluids, etc. So everybody was just witnessing this. That is chaotic. But at these Hollywood parties, I mean, I did a video on this already, which I can pin in the end cards for you to watch, just these Hollywood parties and then just, you know, how fluid they are in Hollywood. So I'm sure nobody even really cared because everyone knew everyone's secrets and that was just how it was. But the real drama wasn't just Lupe's fiery spirit. It was Cooper's mother, Alice. Cooper's mother really hated Lupe and made it her mission to break them up. The tension between Alice and Lupe pushed Cooper to his breaking point, and he lost 40 pounds from the stress. Eventually, with all the pressure from his family and studio, Cooper decided to call it quits with Lupe. When he broke the news, her reaction was like out of a soap opera. As he was heading to the train, guess who popped up? Lupe. And guess what was in her hand? A pew pew. A gun. She took a shot at him, y'all. She actually shot at him. And again, thank goodness she missed because she would have just ended up in jail. But that was a final straw for Cooper. And he was like, yeah, I got to get out of this. And that was it for them.
Cooper's studio, MGM, didn't support the marriage either. They had too much invested in Gary Cooper to risk a marriage that might tarnish his image. Cooper's mother, who was British, did not approve of her son marrying anyone of a different ethnic heritage. In other words, mom was a bigot. So in 1931, MGM sent Gary to Europe to get away from Lupe.
When he's going to the train, Lupe got word of it, so she chased after him, and just as he was about to enter the train, she took a shot at him and just barely missed him.
But Lupe wasn't going to let Gary escape so easily.
But there's more. Lupe's jealousy didn't just stop at romance. It spilled over into her career too. She had feuds with pretty much every starlet you can think of, from Greta Garbo, which I did a video for, Judy Garland, I did a video for her also. And she also had a feud with Dolores Del Rio, which I did a video for. They had a famous feud, you know. Her weapon of choice was to make fun at parties or big events of these rivals by imitating them, impersonating them, but in a demeaning way. And people, even if they weren't comfortable with it, she didn't care. She just would do that. So she was like a nice, nasty person as well, and wasn't too likable. I did the Dolores Del Rio video, and y'all saw she was a little bit more likable. People liked her. So people was just like, this is not really nice. Hollywood loved to box Lupe into a stereotype, dubbing her the Mexican Spitfire and a whole bunch of other cheeky nicknames. But as the Great Depression hit and the world of film changed, she faced some serious challenges. Executives were worried about her accent, but Lupe, kind of worked on that. So when talkies first came out, her first movie was Tiger Rose. It was no longer silent films because she started off in the silent film era. People just she has a very magnetic personality. If you watch like her old interviews, I was like, this is a very magnetic, likable, energetic, and very fun woman, right? So that resonated on camera, especially for that time where women was a little bit more demure, a little bit more subtle. She was kind of like spicy for everybody. So she fell into that spicy Latina Spitfire type of trope. But it was just, she had a very fun personality and she wasn't afraid to show it. And she was very funny too. She was hilarious. And so Tiger Rose ended up, skyrocketing her career, leading to a bunch of new roles and even double the pay for Spanish versions of her film. So she'll also do the Spanish version and get paid twice for the same movie. So she was making money, making bread. In 1932, Velez hit New York for the Broadway debut, but she didn't just conquer the stage. She crossed paths with Olympic swimmer and Tarzan hunk Johnny Weissmuller, and sparks flew. They had an on and off romance that had everyone buzzing, but let's not forget her little fling with the charming Errol Flynn also. She also had a lot of flings, let's just say. It's just too much to name for this video, so I'm just not. And eventually Lupe couldn't resist Johnny's allure, and they tied the knot in Vegas in 1933. But their honeymoon was more like a roller coaster of chaos, filled with bickering and drama. And after just 10 months, Lupe had enough of Johnny's antics and filed for divorce, citing cruelty. She played up her dramatic persona in interviews, claiming Lupe does not believe in loving just one man, end quote.
The main problem was that he was still married at the time. Very soon, Lupe was in the headlines all over again, having this romance.
After a year-long affair, Weissmuller divorced his wife and married Lupe Velez.
They used to tell tales that when Weissmuller would show up for shooting on Tarzan sets, that they would have to spend a lot of time on his body with makeup, covering up scratches.
Weissmuller had left his wife and had married Lupe Velez. Was the talk of Hollywood in the sense that they were very public figures, that they were always fighting in public.
You have Johnny Weissmuller, a 6'3", one of the greatest athletes of the 20th century, and Lupe Velez, a 5-foot tall woman. And the police arrived, they opened the door, and Lupe was totally unscathed, and apparently Johnny Weissmuller had gotten the worst of the encounter.
After a 5-year bout, Weissmuller and Velez divorced in 1938. Lupe's career was on the rocks as well. Her reputation was beginning to hurt her professionally.
Fallout was real. Losing her husband also meant losing her studio gigs. The studio was getting tired. She was with a new man all the time. And she was saying stuff like Lupe doesn't just love one man. Like, she'll be with 2-3 men at one time. She was having menage a trois with other people. She wasn't into everything that Hollywood had to offer. Let's just say that. So she developed a reputation for having an outrageous love life to where she loved to make love, and, Velez was no stranger to drama, but in 1938, she really cranked it up a notch when she returned to Broadway. This time, her feud with co-star Libby Holman became the talk of the town, so much so that it overshadowed the terrible reviews the show was getting. During this curtain call, Velez, fed up and fiery, threw a punch that landed square on Holman's face, leaving her with a black eye. After that little incident, the show was dead in the water, and Velez wouldn't step foot on Broadway stage again, and people were kind of like getting fed up with her. Fast forward a bit, and things got even wilder. The years that followed were filled with broken engagements and steamy romances. But as the decade turned, Velez hit a professional high that was nothing short of spectacular. She starred in a series of 8 comedies known as the Spitfire films, which were groundbreaking for featuring a non-white actress in the lead. These flicks were massive hits and showcased her undeniable talent and magnetic personality. But despite her string of romantic escapades, since Gary Cooper, no one could really match, Gary Cooper. Again, that was the love of her life, until she met Harold Raymond, right? Velez was head over heels and completely ignored her friend's warning about him possibly using her, and he was. Right? As their relationship dragged on, the old red flag started waving again. Raymond's career got a boost thanks to her connections, but Lupe was feeling more and more unfulfilled. And by September 1944, they were on shaky grounds. But then came a shocking twist. In November, she found out she was pregnant, and the reality of it hit her like a ton of bricks. Terrified and confused, she concocted a plan with her sister to pretend the baby was hers when it arrived. Like, let's go to Mexico, let me finish getting pregnant, and then I'll give you the baby. Like, I'll stay away out the limelight. I'll just say I went to vacation for 9 months in Mexico. But her sister didn't want to, and she just kind of dropped that idea, which a lot of stars do, because it would have been scandalous to be pregnant by this man and out of wedlock, etc. But then her agent reached out to Raymond to see what he'd do. His response chilled her to the bone. He offered a fake marriage, but only if she signed a contract saying she knew it was all fake, just so their child could have his last name. Velez wasn't about to let anyone treat her like a charity case, and within days, she called up a gossip columnist to announce the engagement was off. And she made sure to leak that she never wanted Raymond to work and film again. And when it came to getting what she wanted, Lupe didn't mess around, and Hollywood swiftly crushed Raymond's dreams, and she started to have a lot of power in Hollywood till no one wanted to work with him anymore. On the day of her latest film premiere, Velez was in a tight spot, panicking over her options. Her agent mentioned she could always hide out in Mexico or find one of those infamous Hollywood doctors for a quote-unquote procedure. But then she threw out a chilling third option, to take her own life. And her agent was horrified and made her promise she wouldn't do anything drastic. Later that night, at the premiere of Zaza, Velez was supposed to be celebrating, but instead, she felt drained and hopeless. She opened up to her co-stars about her struggle, and while they were worried, they believed she wouldn't actually go through with anything. They left her around 3 a.m., completely unaware it would be the last time they'd see her. And the next morning, her secretary found Velez lifeless in bed. The authorities were called, and chaos ensued. It looked like she's taken a lethal cocktail of 75 second-off sleeping pills, chased down with brandy.
She discovered that she was pregnant, and she went to Harold Raymond, said that she would like to told him the situation, said that she'd like to get married, and apparently he said that he was not interested in getting married to her.
Lupe was devastated. Not only was she heartbroken about being rejected, but she was pregnant with an illegitimate child. This was 1944. Actresses didn't have children out of wedlock and still have a career.
And in the early 1940s, one time she went to this very famous astrologer. The astrologer looked at her chart, determined that she had been born under a tragic fixed star, and told Lupe that she would commit suicide by poison. Lupe had always been very superstitious, as well as being very religious, and the mixture of this made her believe in divine providence and believing in the stars and believing in all sorts of things.
Lupe's tragic date with destiny came on December 14, 1944. It was then that Lupe decided to end her misery, but she was determined to go out with panache.
Lupe decorated her mansion with fragrant flowers, gardenias, and tuberoses, dozens of candles around her bedroom. She wanted her death to be the death of a Hollywood star. Lupe lay down in her bed, dressed in her best blue satin pajamas. What she did at that point was take 75 Seconal tablets and washed them down with her finest brandy. She had her crucifix in her hands and said, well, now I'm going to be looking nice when they find my body in the morning.
She was killing herself out of shame, killing herself to punish Harold for what he did wrong, to express her anger at him.
That's the nice version of the story, the one the studio pushed to protect Lupe's image. Rumors have been circulating ever since her death that Lupe's final exit was less dignified and not quite as serene.
The pills that Lupe took made her sick, in addition to putting her to sleep, that she woke up sometime so violently ill from the combinations of the spicy dinner that she had eaten, the pills that she had taken, that she rushed to the bathroom. She didn't want to throw up and ruin the bed scene. That wouldn't be very nice. So she got up and started going towards her bathroom. And as she was going to the bathroom, she was trailing vomit along as she went.
She either choked to death on her own vomit, or she banged her head and drowned in the toilet bowl. Well, either way, it's not a pretty picture. You can hardly blame her friends and family for wanting to cover up that mess.
The sensationalized account in Kenneth Anger's infamous book Hollywood Babylon turned her tragic end into an urban legend. He claimed she had wanted to create a dramatic scene for her body to be discovered, but instead she slipped while trying to throw up and met a tragic fate. The truth, however, remains shrouded in mystery, just like her captivating life. And then there was close sources to her, friends of her and Cooper, that was like, hey, here's a real story. She was actually messing around with Gary Cooper. She was actually messing around with Cooper still, and Cooper was married at the time and already had a wife, and she was with Raymond. So while she's with Raymond, she's messing around with Cooper. And so she got pregnant by Cooper, and then was trying to fix the whole situation because, come on, you're already Mexican, you're a minority in a industry that don't really care for you like that would look for a reason to drop you anyways. So she was trying to do damage control with Raymond, and Raymond, that's why Raymond was like, you have to sign an agreement to say that it's fake, that if I ever want to get out of this, I have proof that you said it's fake, y'all gotta pay me my money, and yeah, the child can have my last name, but this is not my child, because Raymond was really upset by what was happening. So yeah, I don't know, that does sound kind of plausible. And so she was so depressed over the whole ordeal, her reputation, because she was also, even though she was doing all this crazy stuff in Hollywood, she came from a very strict Catholic family. And we got to remember, her dad didn't even want her to be in Hollywood to begin with. Her dad didn't want her in that lifestyle, neither did her family. So it was kind of like an embarrassment. They didn't really know all that she was doing behind the scenes. So she probably was like, before they found out it's Cooper's, I might as well just end my life so that not only I die, but this baby die also, without anyone ever knowing it's Cooper's, and they can think that it's Raymond's. What do you guys think? Comment below your thoughts on this. This is an interesting story, and it's just wild. It's just wild how scandalous. I mean, if you look at her photos, that era, especially the silent era, of Hollywood, that silent decade for, the ones who came before us, it looks so classy, right? I always thought people were so classy. They didn't curse. They weren't filthy. They, didn't get into certain things. It was just better times. It was the good old days. And the more I do these stories, I'm like, yeah, those days kind of sucked. Those days were far from classy, and people got involved in a lot of things. Even when you do, like, I have a couple videos coming up for you guys on presidents and other leaders just globally. Like, I don't think we ever had a good old days, guys. This is probably as good as the days are gonna get, is where we're at now. There was no good old days, okay? Because I definitely don't want to go back through history, because it was pretty tragic, especially for Hollywood. Like, the things these people were doing in the silent era, my goodness. And imagine, these were your grandparents. But I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the music you're listening to, the link is in the description. Right below also, who else would you guys like to see a video from? And I'll see you in the next one.